Welcome to Occam's Razor. This is BCF Fridays. Please like, share, subscribe. We're going to go through Blazing Catford's site poll and see what we find. House votes to block California banning sales of gas cars by 2035. House voted Thursday to block California from enforcing a rule that would ban sales of new gasoline-powered cars in the state by 2035. Lawmakers voted 246 to 164 to pass a resolution targeting the rule, which ranks as one of the nation's most ambitious policies aimed at combating climate change and promoting electric vehicles. However, it is unclear whether the Senate will follow suit and send the measure to President Donald Trump's desk. Forging ahead with the vote, the House Republicans sidestepped legal opinions from two nonpartisan watchdogs. The Senate Parliamentary Government Accountability Office have concluded that Congress lacks the legal authority to prevent states from enforcing such climate rules. Okay, so how is one state going to enforce its own climate rules when all the surrounding states share the same climate? As well, we know here in Canada, the Liberals have decided to ban all internal combustion engines by 2030 as well. Or, sorry, 2035. So we're on the same path to destruction. We want everybody to use EVs. Huh. I guess they could work in California, seeing as their batteries won't freeze, get damaged, and then catch fire and explode, like they might here in Canada with our weather, where we know that also batteries lose about 40% of their effectivity in the kind of cold that we exist in. So they don't hold their charge that long. They're heavier vehicles. Everything about them is just not worthy of being able to use in Canada to survive up here in the cold, and as well the distance we travel on a regular basis. We'd have to pull in at a charging station, add 2 hours every day just to your traveling so you can charge your vehicle on the road. That's insane. As well, charging anxiety. You don't even know if the charging station at the next one down the road is going to be functioning because half of them have been vandalized for their copper because the economy is destroyed by the liberals. Anyways, that's enough of this story. Let's move on to the next one. Jamie Crockett, it's not a criminal violation to enter a country illegally. Oh, yes, let's just invade illegally. Let's cross the border and not go through customs. That's not legal. That's what she says.
It is not a criminal violation to enter the country illegally. It's not a criminal. It's a crime. It's not a crime, which is why they're so frustrated because they really want our local law enforcement to go out and round up people when they could be looking out for the murderers and the sexual abusers as well as the robbers. They want them to go and round people up on civil accusations.
The mind of a liberal. Brian Brugette, don't fret. Conservatives, your voter base is growing in all the right ways. Yes, well, unfortunately, it didn't grow enough during the election. And was it just over 30% of the population didn't vote this time? A far better cry than the last elections, which averaged about 40% of Canadians not voting. So it does show that there is more frustration and less apathy in the voter base. Well, we all know many of the ridings, the Greens or the NDP didn't run candidates to ensure the majority of those voting on the left all voted for the same party. We saw how close the race was. I have no doubt that the party is growing, and I'm not sure that there will be many that will have buyer's remorse once they start seeing that nothing has changed and the misery will only increase. Drain the Islamist swamps. Lower Austria passes through anti-Islamist legislation. Well, that's very good. Uh, Europe has been inundated with immigrants from a part of that planet um, in West Asia that seems to have a lot of people that have incompatible ideological attitudes when it comes to the ethics and morals that Western society is based on, to the point where they come here, practice Dawa, insist that Sharia become the law of the land, and all the while rake in a lot of social benefits. As a result, they've not made themselves welcome in Austria. We can see that in some of the surrounding countries. In France, like there's over 500 no-go zones where the police, the emergency services, ambulances, and fire vehicles won't even go into these banlieues, these suburbs, because they have no police presence whatsoever and their safety cannot be guaranteed. And who are the majority of the people living in these banlieues? The same people that Austria is dealing with. Canada's new conservative movement resembles Donald Trump's. Oh boy, who wrote this thing? On the surface, Canada's election on April 28th seemed to preserve the political status quo. As in the last election in 2021, the ruling Liberal Party will form a minority government. The Conservatives, the main opposition party, slightly narrowed their deficit in Parliament. The Liberals now hold 25 more ridings, as constituencies are called in Canada, than the Conservatives do, down from a 41-seat gap. The Conservatives fared a bit worse in the popular vote, losing it by 2 percentage points after winning by 1 in 2021. So this writer is not from Canada. Underneath this apparent stasis, however, lies a striking political upheaval. On average, the margin between the two big parties in individual ridings changed by 9 percentage points from 2021 to 2025, twice as much as the shift in the average American county between the presidential elections of 2020 and 2024. Some ridings swung by more than 30 points. These yawning gaps added up to modest differences in nationwide results only because for each riding that moved right, another one slid leftwards by a similar amount. It's now almost impossible to tell The Economist from The Guardian, writes BCF there at the bottom. And it's true. I'm sure that this article, if we go to it, will avoid some of the glaring things that we know for a fact that did affect this election, and that was the mass immigration, uncontrolled, unvetted Canada experience, surging some areas by more than like what was it? Carlton writing 40,000 people were added to the area, and that's not just from merging the other surrounding areas, increasing the size. It was actually 40,000 migrants that were settled into the Carleton area. In fact, those similar numbers can also be pegged at least three other ridings that Conservatives lost. So we know that if mass immigration will continue, we'll probably will continue to see a slide leftwards in some of the ridings, unless, of course, some of that 30% can be mustered out of their apathy and vote next time. Pulsar, Carney's green idealism collides with Western and Canadian economic realities. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like carbon tax for what? For what? Just to make everyone poor. Because Canadians, you are the carbon they want to eliminate. Just 24 hours after Prime Minister Mark Carney's election victory, the contradiction at heart of his political and economic agenda came crashing into view. That's because Canada's largest bank, RBC, quietly announced it's abandoning its signature $500 billion sustainable finance commitment, one of the very pledges Carney championed as head of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. Lost $500 billion of investment because you're a liar. Let's not forget, Carney was indicted by the United States Department of Justice for a green scam Ponzi scheme, which is exactly this. So now the bank's probably looked at its bottom line, knowing that the economy is going into depression from the recession that we are in, thinking that maybe we shouldn't be giving away $500 billion of our money uh, for these crazy schemes. I don't know. I don't think it's going to go good for them because Carney's in charge. And Carney does not take no for an answer very well. That's good news. That's good news. But you know what? RBC, it doesn't change the fact that RBC seized bank accounts during the freedom protest illegally, mind you, because you got to remember the Emergencies Act was deemed illegal by the courts, which means the bank seizures were done illegally. Nobody's ever apologized. Nobody's ever said, "Oh, maybe we did it wrong." No, the banks, like RBC, the charter banks in Canada, said, no biggie. We don't care if they leave. We don't care about our customers. We'll just do whatever we please, whether it's legal or not. Even if the government tells us to do something illegal, well, we'll do it. We'll do it. You know why? Because we care more about the government than we do about our customers. That's the message you're sending, RBC. Even with this little ploy here, it doesn't change the fact what you did during the freedom protest. Still more winning. Trump sends back 4,000 foreign criminals who were here on student visas. The United States is doing it well, slowly but surely, deporting their illegal infiltrators. And just like that video we saw earlier, with them people on the left, thinking illegal, just because they cross illegally, they're not illegal. They will talk themselves into circles just to conform to their own ideology. Hey, MSNBC, are you hiring? I ask, because I can write your story on this for you. Here you go. This one's on the House. The Trump White House shameful removal of 4,000 foreign students from the country is yet another blot on the record of this administration, which in just 100 days has proven to be a legal, political, and moral disaster. Selfless and hard-working intellectuals of color from non-racist countries potentially sacrifice their future to grace this systemic, racist, xenophobic, paranoid nation with their presence, only to be unceremoniously expelled by white supremacist megalomaniac who's threatening our democracy today even more severely than he did last week. Now, who will commit the crimes for us that Americans do not want to commit? Ooh, that's going to be a good read later. Terry Glavin, Mark Carney owes Jagmeet Singh a massive thank you for NDP implosion. Oh, yes, he does. They last year, last year before the ridings were redistrict in Canada, where we went from 338 to 343, prior to that would have been the time for Jagmeet to call an election. uh, before the writing started to change, before he got further deep into doo-doo, helping out the doo-doo liberals with their doo-doo policies, putting everyone into financial doo-doo, including Canada, which has lost its AAA rating, citing specifically that the liberals and Mark Carney were elected into that position. So Fitch knows that we're headed in the wrong direction. So they said, no, 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 we're going to drop you from AAA to AA plus because you, Carney. What Greenland really wants, the Arctic Great Game is afoot. Well, until it gets warmer up there, most people don't care. I've been up to Pangerton on an exercise. Um, and it was hell to get up there in August with the weather. The best time to fly is in July. They told us do the exercise in July, so obviously the military had to do it in August. Probably didn't want to interfere with their block leave or whatever it is they had planned. But as a result, the weather really impacted our air operations. But having been up there at the time, there's nothing there. Other than the few people that Canada has adopted as Canadians and the rangers that they underfund and then skimp on the bullets for them. Did you know that in the past, um, the rangers that we have living up there and invoking our sovereignty just by being present used to be given an unlimited amount of ammunition? Because after all, if you're out there on patrol, you don't want to come across a predator, and there are a few up there. So you want to stay and you want to be armed as well. Living up north, it's not like there's a grocery store or a corner store everywhere. If you've been to Iqaluit, I think they're only down to one grocery store because I know the other one burnt down. Be amazed at what you pay for a head of lettuce. The transport cost to get stuff up there is insane. And the fact that we're paying rangers to because they're there and we were giving them an unlimited amount of ammunition, you'd think that's a pretty cheap ability just to give them some extra bonuses for being up there. Because after all, like sure, use the bullets, hunt. Um, but no, no, you know what happened under the Harper years? They changed it and they said, no, you're only limited to 100 bullets a year. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but I mean, if you're going to train your Rangers or allow them to train and incorporate them into the Canadian Armed Forces, do you think you should give them more than a fixed amount of ammunition during the year, especially if they have to keep their marksman skills up? I don't know. I just think it's a really cheap trade-off to give them a huge amount of bullets because just for being up there, who else are you going to give like free bullets to live up there and run around in orange clothes to invoke our sovereignty? Canada jumps over the edge. An abuser will spook his victim, then prey on her fears to manipulate and control her. Having been stripped of any sense of individual confidence and self-worth, the victim may see her abuser as her protector. Here we have something akin to mass formation psychosis or Stockholm syndrome. Oh, I think they're going to talk about the election. Losing any sense of self-worth and worn down to the point of submission, many of the abused will do and say what meets with the abuser's approval. Critical thinking skills are erased, and the victim will blindly conform to authority. They will do what they are told when they are told without question. Yes, it's a fact. Canada, you're an abuse victim. You've been abused by the Liberals for the past 10 years, and you've just decided to stay with your abuser for another 4 years instead of moving out. Beatings will continue until morale improves. How trans expose the stupidity of our elites. If there's one lesson to be learned from this month's Supreme Court ruling on what a woman is, it is surely this: never again should we trust the wisdom and authority of our supposed betters and superiors. The paradox of the stupidity of clever people may be age old, but it comes to the fore with a gruesome absurdity in recent years. Yes, most people that clamor and support transitioning into a different gender have never really looked into the chemical castration or the surgery where you're basically cutting bits of your body off so that you can fulfill your ideological venture into gender fantasy. Randall Denley attacking Poilievre's conservatives will come back to bite Doug Ford. Oh, indeed it will. I Most Canadians have no idea what conservatism is. If they think they're voting progressive conservative, thinking that they're voting conservative, well, first off, the party's name is an oxymoron. You cannot be both progressive and conservative at the same time. This was an invention in the 70s, hopefully by the conservatives to start absorbing more of the center left votes that the liberals had stolen from them under Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And it worked. It worked for years because Canada had been directed into a socialist bent, mostly because of our geography and our hard winters. You had to look after people. People did this naturally, but of course, the government, especially under liberals, always want to step in, take control over everything, let neighbors take care of each other or supplant them. So now what's happened to Doug Ford? Well, he's been acting like a liberal. He's been pouting and saying that oh, they did this to me during my election, so tit for tat. You know what, Doug? If you were a real conservative, you would have just helped because people that are really conservative in nature will just help other people because they need help, especially if they're supposed to be ideologically compatible with your party, which you just proved that they weren't. Doug Ford, you just proved that the conservatives are too conservative for you by not supporting them because they shouldn't have had to ask. You should have just done it. If they were really your ideological friends, you would have done it regardless. But no, you're a petty tyrant and you're not a conservative, and next election will be yours to lose unless you can brainwash your people into continuing to think that you're a good leader. The Diddy allegations are shocking. Were were they also business as usual? Well, I don't know. We all know that there's been a lot of discussions about what happened on Upstairs Island. I'm not going to say his name. And years later, still the files haven't come out. There's the pictures. Oh, yeah, that's right. And the one girl who was pictured with Prince Andrew, um, apparently in all this island buggery going on. And she says, if I die, it's not because I committed suicide, because I'm quite happy. I would never do that. Never. The next thing you know, she's dead. Hmm. Yeah. Just like many other people who said nasty things about this woman in this picture seem to suddenly expire.
206 dead people attached to the Clintons that they either knew or were witnesses. Most of those deaths were either suicides or plane crashes.
But how ridiculous does it sound that he shot himself in the chest and then, oh man, I should really climb this tree now and finish myself off by hanging myself.
Save the planet, just not a Tesla. Ideology trumps green concerns. Yeah. And that pretty well explains the fish-like mind of the liberal that can't stay focused on anything more than 3 seconds, that can't hold two thoughts at the same time, that is trapped in binary thinking of yes or no, that must cling on to the latest virtue signaling thing of the day. Yesterday, Teslas are good. Today, Teslas are bad. This is the exact kind of behavior we saw amongst communists before communists took over during the turn of the 20th century, from the 19th into the 20th century, by the way, not just the last turn of the century. These bricks, subsidized media is turning Canada into a one-party state. Yeah, well, we just proved that it happened during the last election, right? CBC is probably going to end up getting $2 billion a year by the time the Liberals are done with them. The Liberal-controlled, taxpayer-provided media fund ensures that all the legacy media that can't get readers or people to read their stuff or watch their stuff, that are losing the audience, have to be continually subsidized by a fund that was created by the liberals. Oh, yeah. So you want to know why you're not getting any news on Facebook? Because of this digital law that they put in, and the tax and all the fees that they fund from digital media, the media that majority of Canadians are now tuned into. That's now being taxed to support the legacy media that nobody watches. So this is the entire circle of subsidies, 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 tariffs and subsidies, tariffs and subsidies. So if people want to wonder why Trump is doing what he's doing when he's doing his little tariff trade war, he's basically resetting the international market to get rid of tariffs, to get rid of subsidies, so that goods are actually worth what they are and not being subsidized, so that they can be manufactured in other countries, transported across large distances, and then sold in those markets. Especially you think that the people in that left side of the politics who are always concerned about, you know, climate change and carbon usage and all that, would think that wouldn't it be better to manufacture things right at home instead of manufacturing them on the other side of the planet and then trucking them over or shipping them over, using all that fuel, putting all that CO2 in the atmosphere, if you believe that CO2 actually does that, which in fact, according to the laws of thermodynamics, it doesn't, because CO2 only reflects a quarter about the surface radiation that comes back off the planet, compared to about 4 times of that it blocks from the sun coming in. So if you reduce your CO2, you're actually going to increase the amount of sun radiation coming into the atmosphere. But that's just your little science piece for today. And let's move on to, we're on to the second page. Well, let's look at the top of the second page. Maybe after that, we'll call it quits. Save the planet. Oh, And the story's been added to the top of BCF. Let's go down here. Alberta was home to the anti-Trudeau movement. Now it looks like it's Mark Carney's turn. Try to pay attention. It's been anti-liberal, not just anti-Trudeau, for a very long time. And these past 10 years have pretty well brought the province up to here, right? This is the liberal poop pond before 2015. And over 2015, the liberal poop pond has climbed up to here. And now it's only set to go higher because they want to follow the same policies. Well, thanks for hanging out to the end. We'll see you next time. Catch you later. Bye.